So I'm going to show you how you can factor a trinomial when the leading coefficient is not 1. As you can see, the leading coefficient 2, it's not equal to 1. So when the leading coefficient is not equal to 1, we have to do something different. We need to multiply the a value, the leading coefficient, by the constant term. 2 times -3 is equal to -6. Now, two numbers that multiply to -6 but add to the middle term, -5, that will be 1 and -6. So we can break up the middle term with 1x and -6x. X minus 3. And you'll see why, because now we need to use factor by grouping here. But again, let me just recap what we did. When the leading coefficient is not 1, we do 2. We multiply the constant term. We multiply the constant term by the leading coefficient. 2 times 3 is -6. We find two numbers and multiply to -6 but add to -5. That is going to be 1 and -6. We don't write it as x plus 1 times x minus 6. You would do that if the a value was not 1. If the a value was 1, but the a value is not 1. So we have to break up the middle term into the numbers that satisfy the product of -6 and that add to -5. And that's going to be 1 and -6x. Now that we did that, now that we broke up -5x into positive x and -6x, we need to do factor by grouping. It's kind of hard to film. Now we need to take the greatest common factor in this term, in this set. Like, by the way, how can you know that if you can do factor by grouping? Because sometimes you can't do factor by grouping. You need to know when you can use that factor by grouping. And here's how you know. When 2 divided by 1, this is a 1 coefficient there. 2 divided by 1 is 2. -6 divided by -3 is also 2. Whenever you see whenever you see this number and it's the same as this number, when the first two coefficients have the same ratio as the last two coefficients, because 2 divided by 1 is 2, -6 divided by -3 is also 2. Whenever you see that they both have the same number, the first two coefficients and the last two coefficients, that means you can do factor by grouping. If it's not, then you can't do factor by grouping. It's not gonna work. Now, what we can factor out here is we can just take out an x. That's all we can take out. So we're just going to factor out that x. And when we divide each term, we're just going to get 2x plus 1. Yeah. And then in this term, all we can really take out, since they're both negative, we're not going to take out a 3, but instead we're going to take out a -3. Since they're both negative, so we have to take out a -3. Make sure you don't lose that. So -6x divided by -3, negative divided by negative is positive. It's going to be 2x and then plus 1. I know it's kind of not neat. Okay. Now notice that 2x plus 1, we have a 2x plus 1 factor here, and we also have another 2x plus 1 factor here. Whenever these two factors are the same, like no matter what type of factor, like if they're both like the same in this term and this term, that means you're on the right track. If this was like x plus 2 and 2x minus 1 or something like that, it was not the same factor, then you probably made a mistake, or you're going to have to use synthetic division or something else. But since these two are the same, we can factor out that. We can factor out that 2x plus 1. And now, whatever is left here, that is x minus 3, that's going to go in the second set of parentheses. X minus 3, I know I'm kind of nervous, but yeah, that's how you factor it. It's 2x plus 1 times x minus 3. That's it. Basically, you had two common factors here, so we factored out that common factor, that common binomial, 2x plus 1, and whatever was left here, we put it inside the second set of parentheses. Now, let's try another example. So we have 6x squared plus 13x minus 5, so this is we need to do the things that we did in number 1, because the a value is not 1, it's instead 6. It's not 1. If this is 1, again, we would just find two numbers and multiply to -5 and -13. But since that wouldn't work, we have a 6. The a value is not 1. We need to do 6 times -5, which is -30. I hope I'm explaining this correctly. Okay. I am. Now, two numbers that multiply to -30 that add to 13. Now, since this is negative, it's going to be a positive one. Now, let's make a list. This is going to be 1 and negative 30, 2 and negative 15. 2 and negative 15, that's negative 13. But if we switch it around, 15 and negative 2, it still multiplies to negative 30, but adds to 13. So we're going to break up the middle term into 15x minus 2x. So 6x squared plus 15x minus 2x and minus 5. Now that we have that, always check if you can do factor by grouping. If you do 6 divided by 15, that fraction will reduce. If you do 15 divided by 6, or 15 6, that's going to reduce to 5 halves, right? If you divide both numbers by 3, that will reduce to 5 halves. And negative 5 divided by negative 2 is also 5 halves. Whenever you see the first two coefficients have the same ratio as the last two coefficients, again, you can use factor by grouping. So what we can factor out here is a 3x and be left with 2x plus 5. And in the next term, we're going to take out, let me write this better. 3x times 2x plus 5. And here we're going to take out, well, since they're both negative, all we can really take out is just a negative 1 and be left with 2x plus 5. Now, notice that we have the same common factor. Whenever you have the same common factor, that means you're on the right track. So this is going to be 2x plus 5. And now in the second set of parentheses, it's going to be whatever is left outside. So it's 3x minus 1. And that is the answer for number 2. Here's the last example for the video. Now the a value is not 1, so we're going to have to multiply 2 times negative 6. 2 times negative 6 is equal to negative 12. Two numbers that multiply to negative 12, but that add to negative 4 is 2 and negative 6. That's 2 and negative 6. Now we need to split up the negative 4x into 2x minus 6x. We need to break that middle term up. So 2x squared plus 2x minus 6x minus 6. I mean, you can, Now, what we can do here is, the reason why I put it like that to a negative 6, since the 2's will line up here, the negative 6 will line up here, so it's more clean. Now, what we can factor out, the greatest common factor, is going to be 2x. Not 2x squared, but 2x. 2x. Oh, by the way, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, negative 6 divided by negative 6 is 1. They're both the same number, same ratio. First two coefficients have the same ratio as the last two coefficients. We can do factor by grouping. So we can factor out 2x and be left with x plus 1. 2x squared plus 2x, yeah. And now in the last two set, we can take out a negative 6. Not a 6, but a negative 6, since they're both negative. It's going to be negative 6, and then times, now, negative divided by negative is positive, so this is just going to be, negative 6 cancel, we just get x, and this will be plus 1. Now, since these have the same factor, like x plus 1 in this term, x plus 1 in this term, we're on the right track. So this will be x plus 1 times, now in the second set of parentheses, it's going to be whatever is left outside. That is 2x minus 6. And that's it. That's how you factor a trinomial where the leading coefficient, or the a value, is not equal to 1. If it's just equal to 1, you would find two numbers that multiply to the constant term and that add to the middle term. But if it's not 1, you have to do the factor by grouping method. And that's it for this video.